Hey everyone! Thanks for tuning in to the final video in our 3-part series on youth mental health. If you haven't watched parts 1 or 2 yet, check out the link in the description to get up to speed. In the previous videos, I talked about social worries, like using social media or adjusting to college, and some outside worries, like climate change and school shootings. Heavy stuff, I know. That's why today in this final video, we're gonna talk about some solutions. Steps that you can take if you or a loved one have a mental health concern, but you're not sure where to start. A reminder that hope persists even when we don't see it. With that, let's get started. Hello, welcome to this video. Oh, this is the intro. To begin, we've seen so far that young people have to deal with a wide variety of pressures and concerns. Social media and cyberbullying can negatively impact mental health, and relationships and college can be tricky to navigate. Then there are external worries like gun violence and climate change, which can make us feel like what's happening around us is out of our control. We've got a lot on our plates. For a lot of folks, this uncertainty about the future plays a major role in mental health concerns, and it can impact young people particularly hard. Adults, after all, tend to have more of a sense of identity, plans for the future, or the financial means to seek treatment if the need arises. But that doesn't mean you can't get answers to your questions just because you're young. And one of the most pressing questions you might be wondering is, are your experiences and feelings indication of a mental illness or a particularly stressful time? Is it just a phase, like others might dismissively say? If you do have a mental illness, can it be cured? Or do you have to take medication or attend therapy for the rest of your life? The answers to these questions of self-doubt and confusion are complicated and unsurprisingly, heavily dependent on the individual. For the most part, there's no outright conventional cure for mental illnesses. People tend to focus on managing their mental health instead. And for a lot of us, that means taking medication and seeking treatment. How long we have to do this depends. Sometimes psychological problems can be short-lived, meaning that it's possible to recover completely from symptoms like anxiety or loneliness. Other times, mental illness will always be there, but with the right regimen and some time, lots of people with a mental illness can and do lead wonderful and successful lives. Think of it this way. Let's say you live with a chronic physical condition like irritable bowel syndrome or gout. That condition can be treated and you can recover, but it's never fully gone in a strict sense. IBS can flare up and gout can come back. In the same way a person with gout would avoid shellfish, people with mental health conditions should still take care even after they've recovered from an episode. It can be helpful to think of ourselves as in recovery while being mindful of our specific needs. The fact that mental illnesses often can't be cured, like a lot of physical diseases, might raise feelings of concern or fear. You might wonder, will the person I love still want to be around me if I have to live with this condition for the rest of my life? It can be extremely difficult to know who to tell and when to tell them about these things, and you might not know how to best go about having that conversation. What you're feeling is completely normal, and I won't pretend that it's easy. But there are a few things to keep in mind that can help you along the way. First, it's best to tell people about your mental health concerns when you are feeling well. Doing this makes the situation more calm for all parties involved. Second, tell someone about your situation when it serves a purpose. Maybe you tell a friend how you're feeling so they'll know why you can't hang out with them sometimes. You might also tell an employer in order to receive accommodations at work. Finally, you should only tell people about your mental health situation when you feel ready. There's no one-size-fits-all timeline here, so bring up your concerns only when you feel safe to do so. Being open about your mental illness is part of erasing stigma, but give yourself permission to take things at your own pace. Of course, taking your time is not always possible. There are some people in our lives who may need to hear from us sooner rather than later, or whose reactions to us might mean more than we want to admit. One such person is a parent or a caregiver, and how difficult that conversation is depends a lot on your relationship with them. Maybe you grew up in a loving, open home, or maybe it's the complete opposite. Or maybe you're worried that they'll think your mental health concern is their fault when it isn't, and you don't want them to blame themselves. There are so many different emotions and fears at play here. And going in with a plan can be the deciding factor in how well that conversation goes. So to help you out, I've got an acronym for you to use as you talk to these people. It's simple. No, like really, it's simple. That's the acronym. Let's start with S, self-advocate. In order to be your own advocate, you'll want to learn about mental health and psychology and educate yourself on how things like biology and culture tie into your mental state. The more you know about mental illness, the easier it will be to make a case for yourself. Your parents might dismiss your mental health concerns as just caring too much about what other people have to say or always being on that phone, so you need to stand up for yourself. Use your facts, tell your truth. Don't be afraid to show parents the emotional toll that mental illness has taken on you. If you need to cry, cry. Being authentic to how you are feeling is a part of advocacy too. It also helps to give concrete plans whenever you can. Ideally, your parents could find some ways to help you. If that isn't the case, you might need to do some brainstorming on your own. If you can show them, for example, that you've already found a therapist you'd like to make an appointment with, and you just need them to drive you there, at least you can give them a straightforward and relatively easy thing to do as a start. I is for increment. Try and bring up the topic in small amounts, incrementally. It might be a lot on your parents or caregivers to process everything all at once, so be accepting of change and don't try to force it. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward only to go 4 steps back. That's okay. That's normal. You'll get there. M is for meditate. Now, I don't mean sitting in the lotus position and humming Om. Think of it as a shifting perspective or like a mindset. Try to reflect on life and emotions, but also think about how specific moments make you feel. So like, is this thing good for me and my well-being? How does that affect me? What are specific words and maybe even movie scenes that can help me process and describe how I'm feeling? Instead of thinking I'm sad, what other words do I have in my emotional glossary that more precisely describe what I'm feeling? Betrayed? Exhausted? Do I understand why I feel the way I do? Try and really think about these questions. It can help you communicate your emotional concerns to other people, like your parents. And if you can be clear about what you are experiencing, you come across as more mature and serious about seeking support. P is for patience. Be gentle with others and be gentle with yourself. It might take some time for you and your parents to reach a point where you feel like your needs are being met. That's okay. Don't blame yourself if things don't go right the first or 40th time. You are trying. That's more than enough. L is for listen. Now, this might seem counterintuitive, like, why should I listen to my parents tell me I'm making things up when I'm being vulnerable with them? And that's a fair question, but we won't get anywhere if we yell at each other until we lose our voices. Sometimes our parents act difficult for reasons we don't understand. They could be healing from pain of their own, or maybe they were raised to dismiss mental health and they think they're being a good parent of sorts when they tell you to suck it up. I won't pretend that it's not frustrating, but I do have some tips to keep the communication open and civil. First off, ask questions, but try to ask what instead of why. Kind of like instead of asking, why don't you ever listen to me? You could ask, what can I do to let you know what I'm feeling? This is because when we ask why, it can feel like we're kind of accusing them of something. Another tip is to speak using I statements. So instead of saying, you don't know anything about me, you can say, I feel like you're not making an effort to hear me out. Using I statements can help you and your guardians maintain some verbal distance and avoid accidentally attacking each other. Last but not least, E is for educate. Do your research on mental health and then spread that knowledge. When you apply what you've learned in your everyday life, it could help you become more confident to prioritize and advocate for your own mental health. Now, hopefully you feel more at ease about talking to parents or other caregivers, but if you have a mental health concern that could interfere with, say, your schoolwork, you might want to let your teachers know about what's going on. Talking to teachers about your mental health can be difficult, no matter what your relationship with them is like. And talking to students about mental health can be just as awkward for teachers. For the most part, talking to a teacher is just like talking to anyone else, but there are a few differences. For one, teachers are often authority figures, so talking to them can be a bit intimidating. They're also usually mandated reporters. That means that if they're concerned for your safety or the safety of others, or if you disclose something like abuse or sexual assault, they're required to report it. Only you can decide whether or not to reveal personal information. But it's important to know that what you decide to tell them could be something that goes beyond just them. So let's say you've thought it through and you want to let your teachers know about a mental health concern. What should you do? Well, first of all, it's important to be honest with your teachers, and it's a good idea to start by talking with someone you trust. So if you're in middle school or high school, you might have up to 6 or even 7 teachers. You don't have to approach them all at once or even all of them at all. Maybe you have a history teacher who lets you eat lunch in their classroom, or a physics professor who advises you on an extracurricular you're involved in. Whoever that might be, if you talk to someone you trust more first, it can make talking to other teachers later on a little less intimidating. Another thing you could do is check if your school district offers mental health training for teachers. You might have to contact the school district office to learn more about this because they don't always publicize this kind of thing. But if you can find out when that training was or wasn't offered and which teachers participated in it, then that could help you decide who, if anyone, to go to about what you're experiencing. I know. Sometimes it's not talking to our teachers that scares us, but the idea of having that conversation face to face, in real time, it's nerve-wracking. But you're not alone in feeling this way, and there are some ways you can go about this. For example, you can try to email your teachers questions about mental health rules in class, so you know what options you have. You can keep these questions general if you're afraid they'll be worried as to why you might be asking them. This could look like clarifying their policy on late assignments. If lateness has to do with mental health, do they require a doctor's note or a parent's note to give an extension? Will you be allowed testing accommodations if that's a concern for you? Are these policies written in the syllabus, or do they change depending on what the teacher says that day? It's helpful to keep these things in mind before you decide if you need to have that conversation face to face. You might also wonder when you should talk to your teachers. It's up to you to decide, but it is in your best interest to mention something if your mental health concern is affecting your schoolwork, your grades, your attention span, or your behavior in general. Or if you start a new medication, you might want to let your teachers know just in case you have any side effects in the classroom. As a general guideline, it's better to explain the situation early on instead of waiting until something more drastic happens. On that note, for any classmates or even teachers who are watching, it's a good idea to keep an eye out for your peers and students. If you do notice someone who seems to be acting out of the ordinary, you might want to bring it to their attention and check in. And if a person chooses to disclose their mental illness to you, please treat that conversation with the utmost confidence and empathy. Being trusted with the knowledge of someone's mental illness doesn't give you free rein to gossip about that person in the cafeteria or, if you're a teacher, the break room. A lot of people try to actively hide their disorders, and you never truly know what's going on in people's lives. If you feel that the problem is serious enough to report to someone, then by all means do disclose what's going on, but please treat anyone who confides in you with respect and work with them to figure out a solution forward. Don't just single-handedly decide that you know what's best for them and charge forward alone. Of course, we might be spending more time on the internet these days than we do at home or even at school. So all that stuff about parents and teachers might not matter that much to you. Well, luckily there are a lot of mental health related resources online that you can take advantage of regardless. These include online support networks, websites, and apps. The resources are not perfect, and researchers pretty much unanimously agree that professional treatment is the best way to manage mental health conditions. But that doesn't mean using online materials is inherently a bad thing. In fact, they can be important when you're starting your journey and when you're first learning to manage your mental health. In particular, online support networks or in-person support groups that you can look up online can be very helpful in reminding you that you are not alone on this journey. For example, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline has an online chat function that runs 24/7 in addition to its phone hotline. And many communities have local warm lines that serve as places where you can talk to someone when you're not in a hotline level crisis. One thing to know is that counselors on these types of services are trained to give each person their full attention. So you might have to wait longer than expected to talk to someone, but that's not because counselors don't care about you. It's because they want to give you 100%. So if it's a crisis situation where you can't afford to wait, call your local mobile crisis team if that's available, or an emergency number like 911. If racial profiling or other similar concerns make you worry, try emphasizing to the emergency personnel that it's a health crisis, not a safety one. Ask for an ambulance, not police. Of course, if you're not in an urgent situation and just want a group of people to turn to, a great resource you can use is the Letters of Strangers online community. You can share and read letters and more, even if you're not affiliated with a chapter. But of course, you should consider starting a chapter if there isn't one in your local community. There are also lots of professional websites out there if you want more education about mental health. But you should always check that your source is legit. When in doubt, websites like Psychology Today, the American Psychiatric Association, and MedCircle are great options, which could be a great tool, but be sure to check the privacy policy first to make sure your personal data is being protected. Also, I cannot stress this enough, don't self-diagnose. No matter how credible an online test is, it won't tell you the whole story and you won't know your whole story. So it's always a good idea to follow up with a mental health professional. Point being, online resources and apps are great starting points because the more information you have when you decide to seek treatment, the better you'll be able to manage your mental health. In the description are some additional resources that you can check out. Just remember, don't let online resources be the extent of your mental health education and journey. We've covered a lot in this series, and I hope that at least some of it is of help to you. Maybe you disagreed with some of the things I said, or maybe there's an issue I didn't touch on. There are so many factors that tie into youth mental health, more than I could ever hope to discuss in just 3 videos. But I hope that you learned something new, that you feel just a little more prepared to advocate for your own mental health, and extend empathy and compassion to friends who might have their own concerns. Whoever you may be, wherever you may live, you are not in this alone. Even if it doesn't feel like it, there are people out there who are ready and willing to help you along your mental health journey. You are enough. You will always be enough. That's a promise.